Story 1. This story about love, family, and bad decisions that can have irreversible consequences. In a bustling city like Chicago, Illinois, where millions of people are searching for happiness and success, there is a story that has made the entire community stop and reflect on the fragility of life. It is the story of Violet Hart, a gentle and hardworking woman, and Julian Carter, a talented and admired software engineer. They met at a Thanksgiving party in late 2012, and immediately, their relationship became an inspiration to many. However, what caused a beautiful love story to end in tragedy on their wedding day in June 2013? Join me as we delve into the details of this case, uncovering the causes and events that led to this terrible tragedy, and understanding why Violet and Julian's story became one of the most shocking stories in Chicago that year. Violet Hart was born in 1986 in a small neighborhood in Chicago, Illinois. She is the only daughter in an ordinary family, living with her parents in an old but cozy house. Since she was a child, Violet has witnessed her parents working hard to make a living. Her father worked in a small mechanical workshop, while her mother was a housewife and sometimes took on sewing jobs to earn extra income. Life was not easy, but Violet's family always supported and loved each other, giving her a solid emotional and moral foundation. Violet is an intelligent, hardworking girl who always thinks of others. From a young age, she understood the difficulties her family was going through and always tried to help her parents in any way she could. Despite being busy with housework, Violet still worked hard in her studies. She spent her quiet evenings reading and doing homework by the small lamp, hoping that one day she could help her family escape poverty. However, when Violet entered her teens, her family faced a major change. Her father was seriously injured in a work accident, leaving him unable to continue working. This placed an increasing financial burden on her mother, forcing Violet to make a difficult decision. She had to drop out of school at the age of 16 to help support her family. Violet started working various jobs, from waitressing to selling in small shops, just to earn enough money to cover her daily expenses. Despite having to give up her dream of studying, Violet never lost her passion for reading. The books she read in her earlier years became a great source of comfort and motivation. After many years of hard work, Violet finally saved enough money to realize her small dream opening a bookstore. This small store is not only a place of business, but also a space for Violet to share her love of knowledge and connect with the surrounding community. Violet's bookstore is located in a small corner of the neighborhood, but is always filled with good books and interesting stories. Violet often spends time chatting with customers, introducing them to good books and listening to their stories. Her kindness and compassion have made the store a familiar and favorite place for many people. On the contrary, Julian Carter was born in 1984 into a wealthy family in a quiet and prosperous area of Chicago. Since childhood, he was educated very strictly by his parents and guided to pursue lofty goals in life. Julian's parents were successful people who always had high expectations for their only son. They believed that with hard work and determination, Julian could achieve anything he set his mind to. Julian showed diligence and perseverance in his studies from an early age. He was always an excellent student, not only in his ability to grasp knowledge but also in his meticulousness and carefulness in every detail. Julian's high school and university years passed with very little distraction as he always focused on his studies. He graduated from university with a degree in software engineering, an achievement that came as no surprise to his family and those who knew him. Immediately after graduation, Julian quickly made a name for himself in the information technology industry. He started his career at one of the leading technology companies, where he was continuously promoted thanks to his outstanding ability and dedication to work. Julian's perfectionist personality made him never accept even the smallest mistake. For him, work is not only a way to earn a living but also a passion and the biggest goal in life. Julian often worked late into the night, devoting most of his time to his career, which brought him to the pinnacle of success but also gradually distanced him from the people around him. Because he spent so much time on work, Julian rarely cared about personal relationships. Although many women were attracted to Julian's elegant appearance and success, he always kept his distance, not wanting anything to affect his career. However, there was one exception: Ivy Monroe, a smart and charming woman who once captured Julian's heart. Julian and Ivy met at a technology conference, where Ivy was one of the speakers. Her confidence and sharpness immediately caught Julian's attention. Their relationship developed quickly, and Ivy became the first and only woman Julian truly wanted to be with. However, like any other relationship, this love also faced challenges. Work always came first for Julian, and Ivy began to feel neglected as Julian was constantly absent from important moments in their lives. Although Ivy loved Julian very much, she knew that she could not continue a relationship with someone who was so busy and considered work everything. She decided to end their relationship, leaving Julian with a void that was difficult to fill. After breaking up with Ivy, Julian focused even more on his work, telling himself that his career was the only thing he could control and that he would never betray him. In November 2012, as winter began to creep into the streets of Chicago, Julian Carter and Violet Hart met by chance at a Thanksgiving celebration. That year's Thanksgiving was held in a large hall where people from different walks of life gathered to celebrate the traditional holiday. Julian attended the ceremony as one of the special guests, due to his success in the industry. Violet, although not a person of high social status, was invited to attend because of her contribution to the community through her small bookstore. When he entered the hall, Julian felt quite out of place in the crowd. He was still haunted by memories of his past relationship with Ivy Monroe. The lonely days after breaking up with Ivy made Julian focus more on work, ignoring the small joys in life. He felt as if he was living in a dead-end loop, where work was the only thing keeping him going. Meanwhile, Violet arrived at the ceremony in a relaxed mood and full of positive energy. Although her life was not always easy, Violet always maintained her joy of life and contentment with what she had. She did not expect much from the ceremony, just wanted to enjoy the festive atmosphere and share the joy with those around her. When Julian and Violet first met, something special happened. Their eyes met in the crowd, and for a moment Julian felt as if all his worries and tensions disappeared. Violet's warm smile and gentle eyes naturally attracted him. Julian decided to approach and strike up a conversation with her. Their conversation started out casually, but very quickly both realized that they had more in common than they thought. Julian was fascinated by Violet's sincerity and gentleness, something he rarely saw in the upper-class women he often interacted with. Violet, on the other hand, found Julian to be intelligent and charming, but not as arrogant or aloof as she had previously associated with high-status men. After that Thanksgiving, Julian and Violet began dating. Although Julian was still in love with Ivy Monroe, Violet's attraction quickly changed him. She gave him a sense of peace and security that he had never had before. Julian realized that with Violet he could let go of the burdens of work and enjoy the simple moments in life. Their relationship gradually deepened over time. Violet was not only a life partner but also someone who brought balance to Julian's life. She encouraged him to spend more time for himself, to find the small joys that he had overlooked in his busy life. With Violet, Julian learned to appreciate simple but important things, such as walking in the park together, reading books, or simply enjoying a delicious meal together. However, not everything went smoothly in their relationship. Julian's family, especially his parents, did not support the relationship. They thought that Violet was not worthy of Julian because she did not have a high social status and came from an ordinary family. For them, Julian, a successful man with a bright future, should marry a woman of the same social class who could contribute to the family's career and reputation. The objections from Julian's family created no small amount of pressure on the couple. Julian was torn between his love for Violet and his family's expectations. Although he tried to explain to his parents about his feelings and why Violet was the right woman for him, they still could not accept the relationship. Julian's parents even suggested that he reconsider and look for someone else who could benefit the family both socially and financially. Violet, on her part, felt hurt by Julian's family's objections. Although she understood that the difference in social class could be a big barrier, she did not think that it would be the reason why they could not be together. Violet believed that love and sincerity were the most important factors in a relationship, and she was willing to face any hardship to protect her love. Despite facing many pressures, Julian and Violet still decided to continue their relationship. They tried to keep their faith in love and hope that time will help Julian's family accept Violet. During difficult times, Violet is always there for Julian, encouraging him and reminding him of the important things in life. Julian, in turn, learns to appreciate the values that Violet brings, and he is determined to protect this relationship no matter what obstacles he faces. Their love, despite many ups and downs, has become a great source of encouragement for both of them. Violet helps Julian find balance in life, and Julian brings Violet the stability and security she never had. However, the challenges ahead are still great, and the question of whether their love is strong enough to overcome all of them remains unanswered. But Julian's family, especially his parents, have always been proud of their son's status and success. They believe that with the education and solid foundation they have built for Julian, he can continue to maintain and develop a brilliant career in the information technology industry. However, when Julian announced his relationship with Violet Hart, his parents could not hide their disappointment. To them, Violet was just an ordinary woman, without the prestigious background or assets to help Julian go further in life. They believed that a wife should not only be a life partner but also a strong supporter, contributing to the career and reputation of the family. In their eyes, Violet did not meet those standards. She did not have an outstanding career, did not have a wide social network, and most importantly, she did not belong to the high social class that they desired. Julian's parents openly expressed their disapproval. They believed that if Julian married Violet, he might be ruining his own future. They feared that Violet would not be able to provide the necessary support, both mentally and financially, to help Julian continue to advance in his career. For them, Julian marrying a woman from a different class would reduce his value in the eyes of his colleagues and society. Although Julian understood and respected his parents' opinions, he could not deny his feelings for Violet. She brought him a peace and happiness that he had never experienced before. Violet was not only his lover but also his friend, someone who listened to him and shared with him the joys and sorrows of life. However, the objections from his family made Julian think a lot. Doubts and worries began to arise in Julian's heart. He wondered if he was doing the right thing by deciding to marry Violet, despite his family's objections. He worried about the future, whether Violet could really help him maintain and develop his career, and whether their love was strong enough to overcome the difficulties ahead. However, in the end, love won. Julian decided to marry Violet, despite his worries and doubts. He believes that their love can overcome all barriers and that Violet will bring him a happy and fulfilling life. This decision is not only a commitment to Violet, but also a challenge for Julian to protect and preserve his love against pressure from his family. However, deep down Julian still cannot completely put aside his worries. He tells himself that time will tell whether his decision is right or not. With a heart full of love but also burdened by doubts, Julian enters into marriage with Violet, hoping that their love will be strong enough to overcome all future challenges. Near the wedding day, Julian Carter begins to feel a growing confusion and anxiety. Although he had previously decided to go ahead with the marriage with Violet Hart, the pressure from his family and the sudden return of Ivy Monroe have shaken his confidence. Julian's family, especially his parents, are constantly opposed to this relationship. They worry that Violet, with her humble background, will not be able to provide Julian with the support he needs to continue to advance in his career. The situation becomes more complicated when Ivy Monroe, Julian's ex, suddenly reappears. Ivy, after being away from Chicago for a while, hears about Julian's wedding and decides to return to convince him to reconsider. Ivy still has deep feelings for Julian and believes that they still have a chance to mend their relationship. She begins to approach Julian, recalling old memories and trying to convince him that they still have a future together. Ivy does not hesitate to express her desire to rekindle their old love and even advises Julian to cancel the wedding with Violet. Julian is torn between two choices. On the one hand, he feels that he has found true peace and happiness with Violet, who always makes him feel loved and appreciated. On the other hand, Ivy, with her charm and familiarity, evokes old feelings in Julian. Ivy's persuasion, along with strong opposition from her family, makes Julian hesitate about his decision. In the days leading up to the wedding, Julian finds himself at a crossroads where each direction has unforeseen consequences. He begins to wonder if he truly loves Violet enough to overcome the challenges ahead, or if the relationship is a mistake. The pressure from his family and Ivy makes Julian start to doubt himself and feel more confused than ever. Although he has proposed to Violet and is preparing for the wedding, Julian cannot shake off his doubts. He knows that he needs to make a decisive decision, but his anxiety and insecurity make it difficult for him to do so. Julian knows that any decision will have a profound impact on his life, and he fears that he may regret his choice. On June 20th, 2013, an elegant church in Chicago becomes the scene of an unexpected tragedy. It should have been the happiest day of Julian Carter and Violet Hart's lives, as they officially became husband and wife in front of their family, friends, and loved ones. The church was decorated beautifully, and everything seemed ready for a perfect wedding ceremony. But beneath that calm exterior, a psychological storm is brewing inside Julian, pushing him to the limit of his endurance. Julian enters the church in a state of turmoil. Although he has decided to marry Violet, he still cannot shake off the pressure and stress that has been weighing on him all this time. His family was constantly against the relationship, and Ivy Monroe, his ex-lover, kept trying to convince him to call off the wedding. The reproaches and old memories kept pouring into Julian's mind, making him feel like he was being torn between two worlds. As the ceremony began, Julian tried to stay calm, but inside chaos was brewing. Every vow, every step closer to the big moment made him feel like he was walking into a trap with no way out. Pressure from all sides, from his family, from Ivy, and even from himself, pushed Julian to the brink of insanity. At the crucial moment when Julian and Violet were about to exchange vows, a crazy and cruel decision flashed through his mind. Julian, in a fit of panic and desperation, pulled out a gun hidden in his jacket. To the astonishment of Violet and everyone present, he pointed the gun at her and pulled the trigger. The gunshot rang out in the quiet of the church, tearing apart the solemn atmosphere of the ceremony. Violet collapsed to the floor, blood from the wound quickly spreading across her pure white wedding dress. Stunned expressions turned to horror as everyone realized what had just happened. Screams and cries echoed throughout the church as the guests panicked and tried to flee the scene. Julian, still holding the gun in his hand, stood still for a moment, as if he couldn't believe what he had just done. But then, driven by survival instinct and fear, he turned and fled the church, ignoring the chaos around him. Everything happened so quickly that no one had time to react to Julian's brutal and unexpected actions. The wedding ceremony, which was supposed to be a symbol of love and happiness, turned into a horrifying tragedy, leaving irreparable wounds for everyone present. And from that moment on, Julian Carter's life changed forever, as he transformed from a man about to be married to a wanted criminal, running from the truth he had created. Immediately after the horrific church murder, Chicago police launched a massive investigation to find Julian Carter, who had become the prime suspect in the murder of Violet Hart during their wedding ceremony. Police quickly sealed off the crime scene and began collecting evidence, including the murder weapon and handgun that Julian used to kill Violet, as well as statements from witnesses to the ceremony. Testimonies from guests, including family and friends of the couple, provided police with vital information about Julian's mental state before the murder. Many described Julian as appearing stressed and confused in the weeks leading up to the wedding, leading police to believe that the crime may have stemmed from an unstable mental state. However, the nature of Julian's brutality led police to believe that it was not an act of panic, but rather premeditated. The investigation expanded throughout the city, with checkpoints set up at key traffic points. Chicago police also coordinated with federal agencies to ensure that Julian could not easily leave the state. Meanwhile, information about the case quickly spread throughout the media, causing public outrage and putting great pressure on the police force. In the early days following the murder, police conducted numerous searches of Julian's possible hiding places, including his home, his former workplace, and the homes of family and friends. However, Julian seemed to have disappeared without a trace, adding to the strain on the investigation team as they faced mounting pressure from the public and the media. However, after a week of intense searching, the police got an important clue. A resident of a small town near the Illinois border reported to the police that he had seen a man who looked like Julian at a gas station, where he was trying to buy fuel and food. The police immediately launched a raid in the area. Julian was arrested while trying to leave Illinois to flee to another state. When he was arrested, he showed no signs of resistance, seemingly accepting his fate. Julian was brought back to Chicago and quickly charged with first-degree murder, using evidence from the scene and witness testimony. He was held awaiting trial, and the case became one of the most sensational in Chicago that year. In the cold interrogation room of the Chicago police station, Julian Carter sat across from two veteran detectives, his eyes dull and lifeless. The interrogation began with questions about the motive and events leading up to the murder. At first, Julian remained silent, his eyes never leaving the floor. But as the detectives presented the incontrovertible evidence, the gun, witness statements, and text messages between him and Ivy Monroe, Julian finally broke down. Julian's voice trembled as he confessed everything. He recounted the pressure from his family, Ivy's return, and the panic that drove him to his cruel decision. Julian admitted that he had completely lost control at the moment he shot Violet, but he could not justify his actions. In the end, he simply said, "I killed her, and I will pay for it with this confession." Julian's fate seemed sealed. Julian Carter's trial began in October 2013 in a Chicago courthouse, attracting great media and public attention. The prosecutors, with careful preparation, presented a series of irrefutable evidence affirming Julian's crime in the murder of Violet Hart. Among them, the testimony of witnesses at the church on June 20th, along with the gun Julian used to commit the murder, were the most important factors. Prosecutors also presented evidence of Julian's mental distress in the weeks leading up to the wedding, highlighting the motive behind the heinous act. They detailed the pressures Julian faced from his family and the return of Ivy Monroe, his former lover, as factors that pushed him to the brink of despair and loss of control. However, the prosecutor also emphasized that despite the pressure, Julian's actions were still an unforgivable crime. Faced with such clear and undeniable evidence, Julian finally decided to plead guilty. In his plea, he admitted that he had been caught up in a chaotic mental state, but did not justify his actions. Julian only expressed remorse and accepted any punishment that the court would impose. The court then sentenced Julian Carter to life in prison without the possibility of parole. This decision was made after considering all relevant factors, including Julian's guilty plea and the seriousness of the crime he committed. For Violet Hart's family, this sentence brings some justice, but the pain of losing a loved one is still unbearable. As for Ivy Monroe, although she was not directly involved in the case, she also faced heavy criticism from the public. Many people believe that Ivy's return and actions contributed to this tragedy. She became the focus of criticism, and her name was associated with this terrible case. Ivy, although not legally responsible, but the criticism from the public made her life more difficult and isolated than ever. The trial concluded a tragic story of a seemingly happy woman, now leaving only a past for future generations. Story 2. The relationship between father-in-law and daughter-in-law has often been the trigger for unforeseen tragedies. Complicated situations, generational differences, and sometimes repressed emotions can all lead to conflicts and unfortunate consequences. In this story, we will take you to a peaceful small town in southern Italy, where a tense relationship between father-in-law and daughter-in-law turned into a horrific crime. When boundaries were crossed and greed, fear, and desperation took over, a family paid the price with the darkest things. The case is about Giovanni's family. Giovanni was born in 1960 in a small village in southern Italy, where life was simple and family values were respected. From a young age, Giovanni was known as a hard-working, responsible, and determined man. His life seemed complete when he met and fell in love with the woman who would become his wife. They married in the early 1980s, and soon after they welcomed their only son, Mario. Giovanni and his wife built a happy family life together. He was the pillar of the family, working tirelessly to ensure that his wife and children had a full and comfortable life. His wife, a gentle and devoted woman, was Giovanni's strong moral support. Their marriage was an ideal model in the eyes of those around them. However, when Mario was in his 20s, tragedy struck when Giovanni's wife passed away after a serious illness. This loss left a deep hole in Giovanni's soul. He became lost and lonely, having lost his life partner, the companion who had accompanied him through so many challenges in life. From then on, Giovanni lived alone with Mario, trying to maintain what was left of family life, but becoming increasingly quiet and melancholy. Giovanni's life was turned upside down, and the months that followed were long and lonely. Although he remained strong and steadfast on the outside, Giovanni began to change on the inside. Negative emotions and unfulfilled desires began to emerge, transforming him into a different person, a man haunted by loneliness. Mario was born on July 23, 1986, the only son of Giovanni and his wife. Born into a loving and happy family in southern Italy, Mario grew up with the care and careful teaching of both his father and mother. From a young age, Mario showed himself to be an intelligent, perceptive, and responsible boy. The care and teaching of his parents helped Mario become a determined and strong-willed man, always wanting to build a good life for his family. As a young man, Mario decided to pursue a career in the military, a choice his parents were very supportive of. Determined and disciplined, Mario quickly rose through the ranks and became an outstanding soldier. However, while Mario's career was on the rise, tragedy struck the family when his mother passed away. Mario, then 20 years old, was left to deal with the grief of his loss and to care for his father, Giovanni, who was also deeply affected by the loss of his wife. Despite the pressure of work and family responsibilities, Mario still managed to keep his spirits up and continue to advance in his military career. He was known as a resilient and dedicated soldier. His life changed when Mario met Francesca, a young and beautiful woman. Francesca was born on July 23, 1989, in a beautiful small village in southern Italy. Since childhood, she was loved by everyone around her for her beautiful appearance and gentle, kind personality. Francesca's family was not rich but warm, where she received love and care from her parents. Growing up in that environment, Francesca became a young woman, caring for others, and always dreamed of a happy, peaceful life. However, Francesca's career was not as successful as she had hoped. Despite her efforts, Francesca often had difficulty finding a stable and suitable job. The opportunities she pursued did not bring the desired results, causing Francesca to sometimes feel discouraged and lost in her own life. However, she still kept an optimistic spirit, hoping that one day everything would be better. Francesca's life begins to change when she meets Mario, a young and passionate soldier. Mario's maturity, calmness, and warm heart captivate Francesca from the first meeting. In the spring of 2012, the two attended a small party in the village where she was born and raised. The party took place in the center of the village, where people gathered to eat, dance, and share joy. Mario, a young soldier who had just returned from a long mission, was also present at this party to meet his old friends. From the first moment Mario and Francesca's eyes met, they both felt a special connection. Mario was captivated by Francesca's pure beauty and bright smile, while she could not take her eyes off the tall, strong man with determined eyes. Mario approached and introduced himself, and hinted that Mario's deep and confident voice made Francesca feel warm and secure. The two began to chat, initially with only polite questions, but gradually they realized that they had a lot in common. Francesca shared about her simple life in the countryside, the difficulties she had encountered in her career, and her simple dreams of a peaceful life. Mario, on the other hand, told her about his experiences in the army, his long journeys, and the challenges he had overcome. Although their lives were different, it was precisely these differences that made them all the more attracted to each other. After the party, Mario couldn't stop thinking about Francesca. He decided he had to see her again, and a few days later, he invited Francesca for a late afternoon walk around the village. They walked along the narrow streets, where quaint houses were interspersed with lavender fields. They talked, laughed, and felt comfortable in each other's company. The connection between them grew stronger with each encounter. Not long after, Mario invited Francesca to dinner at a small but cozy restaurant in a nearby town. The dinner was romantic. Mario, with his elegant style and caring gestures, completely won Francesca's heart. She felt so lucky to have met a man as strong and warm as Mario. Their relationship quickly developed. Mario was not shy about expressing his love for Francesca, and she gradually opened up to him. They spent a lot of time together, exploring new places, walking along flower-lined paths and sharing peaceful moments. Their bond grew deeper and deeper, and they both realized that they had found true love. After a few months of dating, Mario decided that it was time to take things further. He planned a short trip to a nearby city with beautiful beaches and resorts. Francesca was excited about the trip, and the two had a wonderful day together, enjoying the sun and the sea breeze. One evening, after dinner at a seaside restaurant, Mario took Francesca back to the hotel where they were staying. He chose a room with a balcony facing the sea, where the sound of the waves could be heard clearly. In that romantic atmosphere, Mario and Francesca felt their love become stronger than ever. The two shared their first long and passionate kiss. Then they went into the room together, where they gave themselves to each other for the first time. It was an emotional and romantic night, where both felt the blend of love and deep connection. After the trip, Mario and Francesca's relationship became stronger than ever. Mario knew that Francesca was the woman he wanted to spend the rest of his life caring for and loving. One autumn evening, while the two were walking in a village park, Mario suddenly knelt before Francesca, holding a ring, and proposed. Francesca, unable to contain her emotions, burst into tears of happiness and immediately agreed. The two quickly held a cozy wedding with the participation of family and close friends. The wedding was held in the ancient church of the village. Francesca, in a pure white wedding dress, walked down the aisle with Mario in boundless happiness. After her marriage, Francesca moved in with Mario and his father, Giovanni, in the family home. Despite her lackluster career, Francesca believed that married life would bring her the happiness she had always craved. However, the happy days were short-lived as Francesca began to face unexpected challenges and tragedies within her own family. After getting married, Francesca and Mario began to look forward to the good news of a new member of the family. However, as time passed, Francesca showed no signs of pregnancy. This began to become a source of worry and pressure for both of them, especially Francesca. Although Mario always tried to comfort his wife that they just needed to be patient and not rush things, Francesca could not help but feel sad and insecure. She began to wonder if something was wrong with her health, and the stress grew as questions from family and friends about when they would have children began to surface. The initial blessings of a happy family gradually turned into invisible pressure for Francesca. As each month passed without any signs of pregnancy, she became more anxious and felt like she was letting Mario down, even though Mario never showed any signs of it. This situation made Francesca feel more alone than ever, especially when Mario was often away from home for military service. The long days alone in the large house made Francesca sink deeper into sadness and insecurity. A part of her began to fear the future and the possibility of actually having a family. However, Francesca's sadness did not stop at not being pregnant. When her husband Mario was often away from home due to military service, Francesca was left alone at home with her father-in-law Giovanni. Taking advantage of this situation, Giovanni began to behave inappropriately towards his young and beautiful daughter-in-law. At first it was just a few meaningful glances, but gradually his attention became more and more obvious and suspicious. One night, when Mario Truck was at work and did not come home, Giovanni decided to carry out his perverse plan. He secretly put sleeping pills in Francesca's dinner drink. Without suspecting anything, Francesca drank the water and quickly fell into a coma. When she was completely unconscious, Giovanni carried her to his bed and performed depraved acts on her, satisfying the sick desires he had nurtured for so long. He began to unbutton each button and every last piece of cloth was removed. He began to do it forcefully and brutally. After completing the cruel act, Giovanni also took sensitive pictures of Francesca to use as a tool to threaten her in the future. The next morning, Francesca woke up with aching body and no clothes on, with a vague memory of what had happened. Realizing that she had been humiliated by her father-in-law, she fell into a state of panic and despair. Francesca cried a lot. Humiliation and fear overwhelmed her. However, she did not dare tell Mario about what had happened, for fear that he would not believe her or blame her. Fear and mental pain made Francesca choose to remain silent, continuing to endure the horror that Giovanni had caused. In the following days, Giovanni used those photos to control Francesca, forcing her to comply with his sick demands. With the threat that if she did not comply, he would post those photos online, completely destroying her life, Francesca had no choice but to accept this humiliation and submit to her father-in-law as a prostitute. The following days became a long series of fear and despair for Francesca. Giovanni, from a father-in-law, had turned into a brutal abuser, not hesitating to turn his daughter-in-law into a toy that he could use whenever he wanted. Francesca lived in a constant state of fear, never knowing when Giovanni would come near her again with his disgusting demands. Giovanni's behavior knew no bounds. He did not care about Francesca's resistance or feelings. There were times when Francesca was cooking in the kitchen. Giovanni would suddenly appear from behind, grab her roughly and commit depraved acts in a standing position, even while the girl was cooking. Despite Francesca's weak resistance, he continued to commit depraved acts in the kitchen, leaving her not only humiliated but also helpless. This abuse was not only physical but also a profound violation of her dignity and self-esteem. Giovanni viewed the abuse of Francesca as a pastime, not caring at all about the pain she suffered. Not stopping there, Giovanni also took advantage of every private moment Francesca had to satisfy his sick desires. While the two were eating together, Giovanni would suddenly stop the meal and drag Francesca to the sofa, where he continued to abuse her. Francesca, unable to resist, could only grit her teeth and endure, tears rolling down her cheeks but not daring to say a word. He turned every space in the house into a place to perform depraved acts, not giving Francesca a single moment of peace. Even when Francesca was bathing, a time when she should have felt the safest and most private, Giovanni would not leave her alone. He would not hesitate to enter the bathroom with Francesca, imposing his terrifying presence upon her. Although Francesca tried to distance herself and cover herself, Giovanni took over and continued his abuse. This brutal invasion only added to Francesca's obsession and distress, leaving her feeling that she had nowhere to run. But the peak of Giovanni's cruelty came when he abused Francesca right in her and Mario's bed. It was a place that should have belonged only to the couple, a place that held their happy memories. But for Giovanni, that bed became another tool for him to torture his daughter-in-law. Every night when Mario was away, Giovanni would sneak into Francesca and Mario's room. A feeling of disgust and despair enveloped Francesca as she was forced to endure the abuse right in the place where she once felt safest. Francesca felt as if she had been stripped of all her freedom and dignity. She lived in constant fear, worried that at any moment Giovanni would appear and demand things she did not want to do. Every time she heard his footsteps, Francesca felt her heart pounding, not knowing if Giovanni was approaching her to repeat his cruel acts. Francesca's life had turned into a never-ending nightmare. She dared not share her pain with anyone, not even Mario. She feared that if Mario knew the truth, he would never forgive her, or worse, he would not believe what she said. The fear of being exposed, blamed, and abandoned made Francesca choose to suffer in silence. But with each time Giovanni abused her, Francesca's pain and humiliation became deeper, and despair gradually took over her entire being. After enduring Giovanni's brutal abuse for days, Francesca could no longer live in fear and despair. She decided to free herself by ending his life. One night, Francesca hid a knife under her pillow and waited for Giovanni to come. When he began abusing her as usual, Francesca quickly pulled out the knife and stabbed Giovanni multiple times, killing him instantly. After killing Giovanni, Francesca called Mario and asked him to come home immediately. When Mario returned, Francesca confessed everything and showed him the pictures that Giovanni had used to blackmail her. Mario, although shocked and hurt, did not blame his wife. Instead, he decided to help Francesca dispose of Giovanni's body. They moved Giovanni's body and threw it down the well in the backyard, hoping that it would never be discovered. A few days after Giovanni's murder, Levis, a longtime friend of Giovanni's, began to worry when he did not appear as usual. Sensing something was wrong, Levis decided to stop by Giovanni's house to check on him. When he arrived, he was greeted by Mario and Francesca, who both replied in a perfunctory and unwelcoming manner that Giovanni had gone to visit a friend far away and had not returned. Although not entirely satisfied with his answer, Levis accepted it for the time being and left. However, when a month passed without any news from Giovanni, Levis began to suspect that something was wrong. His worries grew, and he decided to report Giovanni's disappearance to the police. The police quickly summoned Mario and Francesca to ask about Giovanni's whereabouts, but the couple only gave vague answers, with an unusual attitude which aroused the police's suspicions. The police decided to let them go, but then obtained a search warrant for the house. During the search, the police found many signs of irregularities and noticed the couple's obvious anxiety. After a more thorough search, the police finally found Giovanni's badly decomposed body in the well in the backyard. Mario and Francesca were immediately arrested. During the investigation, faced with undeniable evidence and pressure from the police, Francesca confessed and recounted the whole story in detail, including Giovanni's depraved behavior and why she had killed him in self-defense. Police conducted a detailed investigation into Giovanni's death to corroborate Francesca's account. They collected evidence from the scene, examined the body for signs of physical damage, and examined the crime scene. Photos that Giovanni had used to blackmail Francesca were also found on his phone, corroborating Francesca's account of abuse and intimidation. Mario admitted to helping Francesca hide the body, but insisted that his actions were motivated by love and protection for his wife. The trial took place in late 2014. Francesca was charged with murder, while Mario was charged with concealing a crime and complicity in the disposal of a body. The courtroom was packed with reporters, friends, and family of those involved. Francesca appeared in court looking tired but determined. She testified that she had been subjected to months of abuse, threats, and psychological terror from Giovanni. Francesca's defense attorney attempted to argue that her murder was the result of extreme desperation and a self-defense response to a desperate situation. Evidence of abuse and intimate photos were presented to support Francesca's claims. Mario, in his testimony, admitted that he knew about what Francesca had suffered after she killed Giovanni. He said that he decided to help his wife hide the body and cover up the crime out of love and loyalty to her, even though he knew it was wrong. Mario described his pain when he discovered the truth and stressed that he could not ignore what his wife had suffered. Prosecutors stressed that, despite Francesca's tragic circumstances, her murder was a serious crime. They also argued that Mario, rather than immediately reporting the crime to the police, chose to conceal it, making him an accomplice. Ultimately, after days of trial and deliberation, the court sentenced Francesca to 10 years in murder and self-defense. Mario was sentenced to 3 years in prison for concealing a crime and complicity in hiding the body. The verdict was considered reasonable, but the case left a deep mark on the community, highlighting the tragedies that can occur when victims of abuse are pushed to the limit. This case has exposed a painful and dark family tragedy, where abuse and violence have pushed a person to the brink of despair. Francesca, a young and beautiful woman, became a victim of brutal abuse and eventually had to resort to drastic measures to regain her freedom. However, the price she and her husband had to pay was extremely high, with heavy sentences and an uncertain future. This story is not only a warning about the dangers lurking behind family walls, but also a reminder of the need to speak up and seek help before it is too late. Silence, whether due to fear or shame, can lead to irreversible consequences, turning innocent people into victims. Story 3. Now we will look at a case that happened in Incheon, South Korea in 2001. The case of Hyejin, a dedicated English teacher, was always loved by everyone for her gentle personality and exemplary lifestyle. However, her marriage to Jun Ho, a talented and promising reporter, contained many dark secrets. No one expected that behind the happy appearance, Jun-ho had secretly developed an illicit relationship with Hae-jin's stepmother. It was this forbidden relationship that led to an irreparable tragedy, causing Hae-jin's family to fall apart and leaving lasting pain in the hearts of those involved. Hae-jin was born in 1975 in Incheon, South Korea, and since she was a child, she had faced many difficulties in life. After her father passed away, the family fell into poverty, and Hae-jin was forced to live with her stepmother, Soo-young. However, the relationship between Hae-jin and Soo-young is not at all warm. Soo-young does not give Hae-jin the love and support of a real mother, but on the contrary, there is always an invisible distance, full of tension and strangeness between them. Lacking the love of her father, Hae-jin has had to overcome the difficulties in life on her own. Since childhood, she has realized that only studying can help her escape her current difficult situation. With a resilient spirit and a will to constantly strive, Hae-jin has always been an excellent student, respected by teachers and friends. She aims to become a useful person who can help others, and is determined to pursue the path of education to fulfill her dream. After many years of tireless efforts, Hae-jin has achieved success when graduating from university with excellent results and becoming an English teacher. Teaching brings her joy and satisfaction, as she is able to impart knowledge and help her students. In the eyes of her students, Hae-jin is a gentle, dedicated teacher, always willing to listen and share. Her colleagues also love and respect her, because Hae-jin is always willing to help those around her. Although life is not very comfortable, Hae-jin always finds joy in the little things. She spends a lot of time helping the community, participating in charity activities, and supporting students in difficult circumstances. For Hae-jin, seeing her students' progress and success is the greatest happiness. Despite life's many challenges, Hae-jin never gives up on her dreams and ideals. She continues to devote herself to teaching, finding joy and meaning in helping others. However, Hae-jin's life always seems to lack something, a warmth, a love that she has lost since her father passed away. Every day, Hae-jin still tries to maintain peace in her soul, despite the difficulties and challenges that always follow. But deep inside, she still feels an emptiness, an indescribable loneliness that no one seems to understand and fill. Hae-jin's life, although seemingly peaceful, contains deep sorrows and an unpredictable future. On the contrary, Jun-ho was born in 1974 and was fortunate to grow up in a family with a good educational background in Seoul, South Korea. His parents are both highly educated, with his father being a university professor and his mother being an elementary school teacher. From a young age, Jun-ho was carefully educated by his parents, not only in knowledge but also in ethics and life values. It was from this family environment that he developed discipline and a spirit of self-awareness in studying, along with a passion for learning and exploring the world around him. Jun-ho's intelligence and constant efforts in studying were quickly recognized by his teachers and friends. He was always among the top students in his school, especially gifted in languages and literature. Jun-ho's writings are always insightful, containing new and engaging perspectives, which makes him stand out from his peers. Not only good at theory, Jun-ho is also very active in extracurricular activities, especially in the school's journalism clubs. After graduating from high school, Jun-ho decided to pursue journalism at one of the prestigious universities in Korea. He not only continued to develop his writing talent, but also learned how to analyze, evaluate, and reflect on social issues in a sharp way. During his time at university, Jun-ho participated in many internship programs at major newspapers, where he had the opportunity to interact with veteran journalists and learn from them. These practical experiences not only helped him perfect his writing skills, but also shaped his serious and professional journalism style. After graduating from university with honors, Jun-ho was quickly hired by a major newspaper, where he began his journalism career. Thanks to his perseverance and progressive spirit, he quickly asserted his position in the journalism industry. Jun-ho's articles are always highly topical, accurately reflecting hot social issues, and especially have the ability to attract the attention of readers. This has helped him become a famous reporter, with many articles published on the front pages of major newspapers. Jun-ho is not only loved by readers but also respected by colleagues and superiors. He is always serious about his work, with a high sense of responsibility and constantly seeks perfection in each article. He is also a good leader, often helping younger colleagues in developing skills and career orientation. Jun-ho's career does not stop at writing. He also participates in TV shows, discussions, and interviews, contributing to making his name in the media industry. Despite his busy and stressful job, Jun-ho always maintains a balance between work and personal life. He knows how to build good relationships with colleagues, family, and friends. The success in his career does not make Jun-ho complacent. On the contrary, he always maintains a humble attitude, constantly learning and striving to become an increasingly excellent journalist. After long, tiring days at work, both Hae-jin and Jun-ho feel the need for a place to relax and recharge. It was on a cool morning in Incheon, when they happened to meet at a small cafe located in the city center. This cafe is famous for its cozy atmosphere, where those who want to get away from the hustle and bustle of the city can find a peaceful corner for themselves. Hae-jin, after stressful teaching hours, decided to stop by the cafe to enjoy a cup of coffee and finish reading the book she was following. Jun-ho, after a stressful working day with articles, also entered this cafe with the desire to find a bit of peace. He often comes here to find inspiration for writing or simply to reflect on life. From the moment Hae-jin and Jun-ho met, something special seemed to happen. Their eyes met when they both entered the cafe. Hae-jin, with her gentle smile and bright eyes, immediately attracted Jun-ho's attention. Hae-jin also felt the attraction from Jun-ho's warm gaze and mature appearance. The two felt an inexplicable connection. Hae-jin chose a table near the window, where she could look out at the bustling street outside. She ordered a cup of coffee and started reading. Jun-ho, after a few seconds of hesitation, decided to sit down at a nearby table. He couldn't take his eyes off Hae-jin and felt something urging him to strike up a conversation with her. After a few minutes of hesitation, he decided to stand up and walk towards her. "Excuse me, would you mind if I sit with you?" Jun-ho asked politely with a slight smile. Hae-jin looked up from her book, a little surprised, but she felt the sincerity in Jun-ho's eyes. She smiled and nodded. "It's okay, go ahead." The conversation started with small things, work, life, and hobbies. Hae-jin shared about her passion for teaching and how she always tries to bring out the best in her students. Jun-ho listened attentively, sharing about his journalism work, the pressures and joys of completing each article. Both realized that they had more in common than they thought. The conversation lasted for hours, making both of them lose track of time. It was a morning that neither of them wanted to end. Before parting, Jun-ho boldly asked Hae-jin for her phone number, and she happily agreed. Both of them knew that this was not just a random encounter, but the beginning of something more special. After that meeting, Jun-ho couldn't stop thinking about Hae-jin. He felt something about her that attracted him, not only because of her beautiful appearance, but also because of her intelligence, gentleness, and sincerity. The next day, he texted Hae-jin, and from then on they started dating. Their relationship developed quickly and naturally. During their dates, they often strolled through the quiet streets of Incheon, sharing stories about life, dreams, and aspirations. They discovered that they both had a common desire to build a happy and stable family. Jun-ho felt that Hae-jin was the woman he could spend the rest of his life with, and Hae-jin felt that she had found a man she could rely on. Soon after, they decided to get married. Their wedding was a cozy affair, attended by family and close friends. Hae-jin wore a pure white wedding dress, looking like an angel in Jun-ho's eyes. Jun-ho, in a smart black suit, could not hide his happiness and pride as he stood next to the woman he loved. Their married life, at least on the surface, was filled with happiness and love. They moved into a small, lovely apartment in Incheon, where every corner of the house was decorated with Hae-jin's meticulousness and care. Every morning, Hae-jin prepared breakfast for both of them, and they enjoyed the meal together before starting a new working day. In the evenings, they often watched movies or read books together, sharing stories of the day and plans for the future. To those around them, Hae-jin and Jun-ho are an ideal couple. They often appear together at parties and social events, always radiant and happy together. Jin continues her teaching career, bringing joy and knowledge to her students. Junho, with his growing journalism career, has become a well-known and respected name. However, married life is not all rosy. Although they appear to be a perfect couple, the pressures of work and life gradually affect them. Junho, with his busy work and constant business trips, gradually becomes distant from Jin. She begins to feel lonely, but still tries not to let those things affect the happiness of the family. Even so, Jin can't help but wonder if the life she's living is really what she dreamed of. In her quiet moments, Jin often sits by the window, looking out at the night sky and wondering if what she's seeing is truly happiness or just an illusion. She loves Junho and believes that he loves her back, but a feeling of insecurity and anxiety still lingers in her heart. The small changes in their relationship seem to not weaken the love they have for each other, but they create invisible distances that both of them feel but cannot express. Jin and Junho's married life, although filled with happy moments, also begins to contain challenges they never thought of. They continue to walk the path of marriage together, but it seems that dark clouds have begun to obscure the bright sky they once gazed upon together. Although Jin and Junho's life appears to be a happy picture on the surface, a dark secret is secretly brewing. Junho, the seemingly ideal husband, begins to develop wrong feelings for Jin's stepmother, Su-young. Every time Junho and Jin visit their stepmother's house, the glances they exchange, the unintentional but meaningful gestures, gradually become unforgettable moments for both Junho and Su-young. Su-young, at 40, is no longer as youthful as before, but she still exudes a mysterious charm. Since her husband's death, Su-young's life has become lonely and empty. Although she always tried to act as a caring stepmother, her relationship with Jin was never really warm. However, when Junho appeared, Su-young's life began to change. She could not have imagined that her heart would flutter once again, and what was worse, this time the target was her son-in-law. At first, Junho's feelings for Su-young were just a temporary curiosity. Not only was Su-young attractive, but she also possessed a wisdom and experience that Junho did not find in other young women. She understood life and the hardships a woman faced, and that made Junho feel attracted to her. Every time he met her, Junho felt a strange attraction from this woman, but he told himself that it was just a fleeting feeling. However, those feelings were more than just curiosity. Su-young also began to notice the change in Junho's eyes. At first she thought it was just respect and affection from her son-in-law, but gradually she realized that those eyes had a different meaning, deeper and stronger. She began to feel a new emotion rising within her, an emotion that she had not felt for a long time. It was the desire, the passion, and the madness of love. Whenever Jin and Junho visited the house, Su-young always found a way to be close to Junho. Sometimes it was just a small but meaningful sentence. Sometimes it was an accidental touch that made her heart beat faster. Her gestures and words became more and more daring, and that did not escape Junho's eyes. He began to feel attention but could not resist Su-young's attraction. The feelings between Junho and Su-young gradually became stronger, to the point that both of them could not control themselves. The times Jin accidentally left them alone in the living room, or when she went to work a little early, became opportunities for them to get closer to a moral breakdown. At first it was just a few glances, some hidden words, but soon they started secretly dating behind Jin's back. Every time Junho and Jin visit Su-young's house, Junho feels anxious, but at the same time can't wait to see Su-young. His guilt towards Jin is gradually overwhelmed by his intense desire for her stepmother. At first, Junho tries to remind himself that this is a wrong relationship, that he shouldn't betray his wife. But Su-young's attraction is too strong, and gradually he can't resist. Su-young, even though she knows what she's doing is wrong, can't help but feel happy when she's with Junho. As to her, Junho is not only a young and attractive man, but also someone who makes her feel like she's reliving her youth. Every time they secretly meet, Su-young feels like she's escaping her current boring and lonely life. These encounters brought her a satisfaction she had never felt before, even more intense than her relationship with her late husband. Junho, who was initially just caught up in Soo-young's charm, gradually became infatuated with her. He began to feel the satisfaction and excitement that this relationship brought, to the point of forgetting the moral values he once held dear. Their secret dates gradually became more frequent, and each time Jun-ho's feelings of guilt and anxiety were pushed away. Each time they dated, Soo-young and Jun-ho had to carefully hide their relationship. They often chose remote, less frequented places, or sometimes simply had short but passionate meetings at Soo-young's house when Hae-jin was not home. Soo-young, despite always being cautious, could not hide the happiness and satisfaction she felt from this relationship. She felt young again, and the lonely days seemed to have been replaced by the intense emotions that Jun-ho brought. However, this relationship could not exist without tension and anxiety. Both Jun-ho and Soo-young knew that if Hae-jin found out the truth, everything would collapse. Jun-ho's betrayal would not only hurt Hae-jin, but could also completely destroy their family. But despite knowing the consequences, neither of them could stop. The attraction, passion, and intense feelings they had for each other overcame all reason and morality. Gradually, their secret meetings become more frequent, and the relationship between Jun-ho and Soo-young becomes more than just a romantic one. They cross all moral and ethical boundaries, and that sets the stage for an inevitable tragedy. The sweet and passionate moments are now replaced by tension, anxiety, and fear of what will happen if their secret is revealed. Jun-ho and Soo-young know they are playing with fire, but the attraction and intense feelings between them are too strong to stop. With each passing day, this illicit relationship pushes them further away from the right path and closer to the collapse of the life they have worked so hard to build. On the night of May 20th, 2001, after a seemingly normal evening at Soo-young's stepmother's house, Hae-jin has no idea that these are the last hours of her life. When she felt tired and decided to go to bed early in the guest room, Jun-ho and Soo-young, under the cover of darkness, began to carry out a brutal plan that they had secretly planned for a long time. Jun-ho, with a calculating gaze, waited until Hae-jin completely fell asleep. At the same time, Soo-young, although a little worried, was overcome by her ambition and crazy passion. They entered Hae-jin's bedroom, where she was sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of what was going on around her. In the thick darkness, with only the dim light from the nightlight, Jun-ho pulled out the rope he had prepared in advance. With Soo-young's help, they gently approached Hae-jin, trying not to make any noise. When they reached the bed, Jun-ho quickly wrapped the rope around Hae-jin's neck and tightened it. Hae-jin woke up in horror, but everything was too fast and unexpected for her to react. Her last efforts were in vain as the strength of the rope and the two attackers was too great. In just a short period of time, everything was over. Hae-jin, a gentle and lovely woman, was brutally murdered by the husband she trusted the most and her stepmother. The atmosphere in the bedroom was quiet again, but now that silence only highlighted the horror and guilt that had just occurred. After confirming that Hae-jin had no more signs of life, Jun-ho and Soo-young quickly moved on to the next stage of the plan, setting up a fake crime scene. They knew that only by making the incident look like a robbery and murder could they hide the truth and continue their lives without being discovered. Soo-young, with trembling but determined hands, began to rummage around the room. She pulled out drawers, scattering Hae-jin's clothes and personal belongings on the floor. Jun-ho then smashed some of the furniture, creating the appearance of a violent break-in and ransacking. They carefully arranged the scene, trying to make it look as if a struggle had taken place. Next, to make the story they were about to tell the police more convincing, Jun-ho used a small knife to cut himself on the hand, creating small but enough wounds to prove that he had tried to fight off his attacker. Soo-young also bruised herself in a few places to add authenticity to their fake story. Once everything was carefully prepared, Jun-ho and Soo-young looked around the room again to make sure no detail had been overlooked. They knew that even the slightest mistake could lead to their plan being exposed. When he felt safe enough, Jun-ho took out his phone and called the police emergency number. His voice was shaking, filled with fear and panic as he reported that they had been attacked by an intruder during the night, and when he woke up he found his wife murdered. Soo-young sat beside him, her face pale and filled with anguish, trying to hide the coldness inside. The call ended, and Jun-ho and Soo-young sat silently in the room where they had just created fake chaos. They knew that there was no turning back, and that what they had just done would forever change their lives. The moments of suspense before the police arrived were long, as they both realized that they had gone too far, and now all that remained was fear and anxiety about the unpredictable consequences they might face. After the call ended, the Incheon police quickly arrived at the scene. Police car lights illuminated the small street, breaking the quiet atmosphere of the late night. The police officers, with serious and cautious eyes, entered the house where the murder had just occurred. They were led by Jun-ho and Soo-young, both of whom looked panicked and distressed, into the bedroom, where Hae-jin's body lay motionless on the bed. The scene before them was truly horrifying. Hae-jin lay still with a pale face, no signs of life. The room was in disarray, with furniture scattered everywhere, making the scene look like a robbery and murder. Jun-ho and Soo-young took turns telling the story they had prepared in advance. They were suddenly attacked in the night by an intruder, and when they woke up they found Hae-jin had been murdered. At first their story seemed plausible, but experienced investigators immediately noticed irregularities in their testimony and the scene. The wounds that Jun-ho and Soo-young inflicted on themselves, although they looked serious, were not convincing enough. In particular, the room, although in disarray, appeared to have been arranged intentionally, causing the investigators to doubt the authenticity of the story. As they began to investigate more closely, the police found that the traces at the scene did not completely match Jun-ho and Soo-young's statements. The objects in the room were ransacked, but there were not many signs of a fierce struggle. Furthermore, there was no clear evidence of an outsider breaking into the house, such as strange fingerprints or footprints. This raised suspicions in the investigators that the case might not be a simple robbery and murder. At the same time, the investigators began to look deeper into the relationship between Jun-ho and Soo-young. Several neighbors and acquaintances of the family were interviewed, and it was not long before they realized that there were abnormalities in the relationship between the stepmother and son-in-law. The frequent meetings without hygiene, the overly intimate looks and gestures between Jun-ho and Soo-young began to attract the attention of the police. Witnesses revealed that they had seen the two in places where only a married couple or very close people would appear together. The investigators decided to keep a close watch on Jun-ho and Soo-young and continued to collect evidence. They found signs that the relationship between the two was more than just a normal family relationship. As the investigation continued, the evidence increasingly pointed to Jun-ho and Soo-young as the ones behind the murder. When the investigators searched Jun-ho's phone and computer, they found text messages and emails between Jun-ho and Soo-young containing ambiguous words, even frank exchanges about solving the problem with hygiene, mysterious calls in the middle of the night, coded messages full of hidden meanings. All gradually paint a clearer picture of their murder plot. Realizing that the evidence is increasingly against them, Jun-ho and Soo-young begin to show their flaws. During lengthy interrogations, the police separate them and use psychological techniques to create pressure. They constantly ask questions that probe into the contradictions in both of their testimonies, and gradually the tension begins to show. Soo-young, who initially appeared strong and steadfast, begins to falter and change her testimony several times, which further raises the police's suspicions. Finally, after hours of intense interrogation, under unbearable mental pressure, Jun-ho breaks down. He confesses that he and Soo-young conspired to kill Hae-jin so that they can continue their illicit relationship without being discovered. According to Jun-ho's testimony, their plan involved murdering Hae-jin while she was sleeping and making it look like a robbery and murder, in the hope that the police would not suspect anything and the case would be closed. Soon after Jun-ho confessed, Soo-young was forced to admit her involvement in the murder. She admitted that her relationship with Jun-ho had grown from initial sympathy to uncontrollable passion. In her confusion, she and Jun-ho hatched this brutal plan, hoping that with Hae-jin dead, they would be able to live happily together without worrying about being discovered. After getting confessions from both, the police had enough evidence to arrest Jun-ho and Soo-young on charges of premeditated murder. The case quickly became the focus of the media, attracting public attention not only because of the brutality of the crime, but also because of the complex nature of the relationships between the parties involved. When the case was brought to trial, the public was told the gruesome and terrifying details of Jun-ho and Soo-young's plan. The two not only betrayed Hae-jin's trust but also betrayed basic human values. The trial of Jun-ho and Soo-young, which took place on November 17, 2001, became an event that attracted great attention from the public and the media. In court, Jun-ho and Soo-young faced judgment, not only by the law but also by the community. The atmosphere of the trial was filled with tension and pressure, as the attendees, including Hae-jin's family, friends, and even the people in the area, all expected a suitable sentence for the two criminals. The prosecutors presented in detail the undeniable evidence of the crimes committed by Jun-ho and Soo-young. They exposed the wrong relationship between Jun-ho and Soo-young, which started with forbidden feelings and then turned into a brutal plot to eliminate Hae-jin. Evidence, including text messages, emails exchanged between the two, mysterious phone calls, and traces at the scene, all clearly indicate that this was not a robbery murder case, as Jun-ho and Soo-young initially claimed. The prosecutor emphasized that the main motive of the case was the desire to continue their illicit relationship without being discovered, leading the two criminals to decide to kill Hae-jin, their poor wife and daughter. They had planned meticulously, from choosing the time to attack when Hae-jin was sleeping to setting up a fake scene to hide their crime. However, these details betrayed them when investigators discovered inconsistencies in their stories and the evidence at the scene. Throughout the trial, Jun-ho and Soo-young tried to maintain their composure, but under the pressure of clear evidence and strong criticism from the public, both eventually bowed their heads and confessed. Their confessions unraveled the entire evil plot, leaving everyone in the courtroom shocked and outraged. Both were sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole, ending any hope of a future of freedom for those who caused Hae-jin's unjust death. This event not only shattered a family but also caused shock and pain in the community. The people of Incheon, who once lived in a peaceful environment, now had to face the fact that a barbaric crime had occurred right in their own home, which should have been the safest and most peaceful place. Hae-jin's death became a symbol of loss and the inconsolable pain of those who loved her. The trial is over, but the wounds it left in the hearts of those involved are still there. The dangers that can be hidden behind seemingly harmless covers, and the need to be more vigilant about what is happening around you. Story 4. In family tragedy, murder cases often leave pain for all parties involved. In this story, we will explore a tragic case that occurred in the Netherlands on March 24, 2016, involving a secret love affair, betrayal, and ended with the tragic death of a powerful man. In the hospital world, where decisions involving human life are made every day, there exists a dark corner where power can turn into deadly temptation. This is the story of Bram, an ambitious and powerful hospital director who uses his position to seduce Julia, a young female doctor just out of school. It was thought that this extramarital affair would help Julia advance in her career, but no one expected the horrifying truth to be waiting ahead. Let's find out the details of this case. The town of Zwolle, located in the northeast of the Netherlands. Zwolle is a place famous for its ancient beauty and peaceful life, where major disturbances rarely occur. However, behind that peaceful picture is a dramatic and tragic story that has shaken this small community. The largest hospital in the town, where Julia works, is considered the heart of Zwolle, saving thousands of lives every year. But it is here, in a hidden corner of the hospital, that an illicit love affair has secretly blossomed between Julia, a young female doctor, and the powerful director of the hospital. Julia was born in 1988. Growing up in a middle-class family, Julia was surrounded by the love and support of her parents. From a young age, she stood out for her intelligence and passion for learning. Julia's dream of becoming a doctor began when she was a little girl, often helping her mother take care of the elderly in the neighborhood. After graduating from high school with excellent results, Julia decided to pursue her dream and entered a prestigious medical university in Amsterdam. The years of studying there were not easy, but with determination and constant effort, she overcame all challenges to become one of the best students in the department. Julia graduated with honors and returned to her hometown of Zwolle to begin her medical career. During this time, Julia focused on her studies and career development, and almost ignored romantic relationships. She always believed that success in her career was the most important thing, and only when she achieved that, she could think about building a family. Julia's life changed when she met Ruben, her future husband. Ruben is a military officer born in 1986. Since childhood, he has had a passion for the military, growing up in a family with a military tradition. After graduating from high school, Ruben joined the Dutch army, where he quickly distinguished himself through difficult and dangerous missions. With courage and a sense of responsibility, Ruben gradually climbed the ranks in the army, becoming an officer respected by his colleagues. Julia and Ruben first met in the summer of 2013 at a small cafe in the center of Zwolle. Julia, then a young doctor who had just started working at the town hospital, often came to the cafe after work to relax. Ruben, an army officer, also frequented the cafe to find some peace after a stressful day. Their meeting was by chance when Julia, in her haste to find a seat, accidentally spilled Ruben's coffee. She quickly apologized, and Ruben, being calm and polite, just smiled and assured her that there was nothing to worry about. They started talking. From the initial apology, the conversation turned to work, life, and then both quickly realized that they had a lot in common. After their first meeting, Julia and Ruben often met at that coffee shop. They began to spend more time together, from early morning walks around town to relaxing evenings over coffee. Ruben was drawn to Julia's intelligence, enthusiasm, and kindness, while Julia found Ruben to be mature, warm, and trustworthy. After more than a year of dating, Ruben felt it was time to commit his life to Julia. He planned a romantic proposal at the town lake, where they often camped and watched the stars together. One early autumn evening, under the starry sky, Ruben knelt before Julia and proposed. Julia, touched by Ruben's sincere feelings and concern, agreed without hesitation. The couple got married in the spring of 2015 in a small church in Zwolle, surrounded by their family and friends. The wedding was warm and simple, true to their personalities. Ruben and Julia started their married life with hopes of a bright and happy future together. After their wedding in the spring of 2015, Julia and Ruben entered married life with full faith and hope. They enjoyed sweet moments together, building a happy home in Zwolle. Julia continued her work at the hospital, while Ruben maintained his work in the army. Despite their busy work, both of them always tried to make time for each other, sharing the joys and difficulties in life. That seemingly peaceful life was gradually disrupted when Bram, a new hospital director, was appointed to work at the hospital where Julia worked. When Bram first took office as hospital director, he quickly noticed Julia, not only because of her beautiful appearance, but also because she was respected by her colleagues and patients for her dedication to work. Her intelligence and sharpness had attracted Bram's attention from the first days he arrived at the hospital. Bram, an ambitious man who was not afraid to use his power for personal gain, began to keep an eye on Julia. He would frequently appear in the departments where Julia worked, occasionally stopping to chat with her. At first, these conversations seemed to consist of compliments about her work, but Bram soon turned to personal comments about Julia's appearance and style. Julia sensed Bram's special interest, but as the new director she acted polite and professional, not thinking that Bram had any other intentions. One day Bram invited Julia to his office to discuss a new project that he thought she would be a good fit for. Julia was a little surprised but also excited, as she thought this could be an opportunity to advance her career. When Julia entered the office, Bram greeted her warmly and invited her to sit down. Starting with compliments about Julia's abilities and potential for growth, Bram gradually shifted the topic to more personal matters. He mentioned the difficulty of promotions for young doctors and hinted that her career might be more favorable if she had someone like him behind her. Julia began to sense that something was wrong, but in the face of Bram's authority, she tried to stay calm and listen. After a while of talking, Bram got straight to the point. He leaned back in his chair, his eyes calculating, and told Julia that he could help her advance quickly, surpassing her other colleagues if she agreed to become his mistress. Bram promised that with his help, Julia would not only receive the best opportunities in the hospital, but would also be able to achieve positions she could never have imagined in a short time. In return, he demanded absolute obedience and secrecy from Julia. Julia was stunned by this blatant offer. She was at a loss, not knowing how to react. An internal struggle began between her loyalty to Reuben and her work ethic and the allure of power and advancement that Bram was drawing before her. Julia promised to think about Bram's offer, then left the office in a state of confusion. After that meeting, Bram continued to put subtle pressure on Julia. He constantly made her feel that she was being favored, but at the same time made her realize that if she did not accept the offer, she might have trouble in her career. Julia's hesitation lasted for many days, and finally, under pressure and temptation, she made a decision that she would later pay dearly for. Late one afternoon, when most of the hospital staff had left after their shift, leaving only the night shift workers and a few last-minute cleaning staff, Julia received a text message from Bram asking her to come to his office as soon as her shift ended. Feeling pressured and anxious, but unable to refuse, Julia reluctantly walked to the director's office. When she arrived, the air was heavy and tense. Julia knocked on the door, and Bram opened it and invited her in with a smug smile on his face. He locked the door as soon as Julia entered, the sound of the lock echoing in the quiet space, making Julia feel more anxious and uneasy. Bram gestured for Julia to sit in the chair across from his desk. The air in the room seemed tense, and Julia could feel the tension emanating from her own. Bram, with an air of authority, paced slowly around the desk, like a predator circling its prey. Bram began the conversation with sweet but calculating words. He talked about the opportunities that awaited Julia, about how she could quickly advance in the hospital with his help. Julia, although disgusted by Bram's words, also realized that he held great power in his hands, and that refusing could have dire consequences for her career. After some hesitation, Julia, caught up in fear and temptation, finally nodded in agreement. She agreed to Bram's deal, accepting to become his mistress in exchange for career advancement. As soon as Julia agreed, Bram did not miss any opportunity. He walked towards Julia, his eyes filled with desire and power. Bram asked Julia to make the first transaction right there, in his office. Before Julia could react, Bram moved closer, his hands quickly grabbing her shoulders. Julia felt her whole body freeze as Bram began to act. He leaned down, whispering in her ear a series of coercive demands and commands. Bram didn't give Julia time to think or refuse. He began to force her to do what he wanted. Loyalty and fear rose in Julia's heart, but she had no choice but to follow Bram's orders in desperation. After the first time in Bram's office, Julia's affair with him did not end there. Bram continued to arrange secret meetings with Julia at luxury hotels in town and the surrounding areas. To keep it secret, Bram often chose hotels far away from the hospital, where no one would recognize them. These rendezvous were clandestine, often in the late afternoon or evening, when Julia could avoid the attention of her colleagues and Reuben. Every time she entered a new hotel, Julia could not help but feel nervous and uneasy, but Bram always assured her that everything would be kept secret. He always booked under a false name and often asked Julia to arrive after a certain time to avoid being noticed. Inside the luxurious hotel rooms, Bram continued to exploit Julia. He demanded that she comply with his demands, and each time they met, Julia felt like she was falling deeper into a spiral of guilt with no way out. Although she initially accepted the relationship for the sake of advancing her career, her feelings of guilt and self-loathing grew. However, Julia was trapped, and she had no idea how to get out of this situation. Not stopping at hotel meetings, Bram also arranged secret camping trips with Julia. Under the pretext of business trips or medical conferences, Bram often invited Julia to go with him to quiet suburbs or nearby wild forests. Here, in a space completely isolated from the outside world, Bram could control everything without fear of being discovered by anyone. On these camping trips, Julia and Bram often stayed in small tents, far away from the city. Although the surrounding natural scenery was beautiful, for Julia, each trip became a nightmare. Bram not only took advantage of her physically, but also psychologically manipulated her into submission and silence. He constantly reminded Julia of what she could lose if the secret were revealed. After a long period of being caught up in an affair with Bram, Julia gradually becomes stressed and tired. The secret meetings, the constant lies. Ruben, who is an observant and sensitive person, begins to notice unusual changes in his wife's mysterious phone calls, late home visits, and a growing distance between the two. Ruben decided to investigate to find out the truth. After much surveillance and information gathering, he finally discovered that Julia was having an affair with Bram, the director of the hospital where she worked. When the truth was revealed, Ruben felt like he had been stabbed in the heart. The betrayal from the wife he trusted the most sent Ruben into a state of shock and extreme anger. In a fit of rage, Ruben decides to take the betrayal he suffered into his own hands. He cannot accept that the man his wife is having an affair with is the man in power at the hospital, the man the whole town respects. With his mind dominated by hurt and anger, Ruben plots revenge. One afternoon, while Julia was working at the hospital, Ruben quietly entered the hospital with a gun. He walked quickly and determinedly, heading straight for Bram's office. When he arrived, Ruben did not hesitate, opening the door and barging in, ignoring the shock and panic on Bram's face. Before Bram could react, Ruben pulled out a gun and shot him repeatedly. The gunshot echoed dryly in the quiet space of the hospital, ending Bram's life on the spot. Blood from Bram's body flowed onto the floor, and he fell without a single excuse. After committing this cruel act, Ruben felt everything around him stop. He sat down on the ground at the scene, still holding the gun tightly, his eyes staring blankly into space. Ruben had no intention of running away or resisting. He waited for the police to arrive with a feeling of exhaustion and resignation. The paramedics and security guards, upon hearing the gunshots, quickly called the police. The police rushed into the director's office and immediately saw a bloody scene, Bram's body lying on the floor, and Ruben crouched beside him, not resisting arrest. Ruben was handcuffed and let out, while hospital staff and patients watched in horror. All that was left was a deadly silence and a deep sense of pain in Julia, who had not only lost the man who had taken advantage of her, but was also facing the family tragedy she had helped create. After Ruben was arrested at the scene, the police quickly sealed off the area and began an investigation. Bram's body was taken for autopsy, while Ruben was taken to the police station for questioning. The hospital murder shocked the community, and everyone was curious about the motive behind this brutal act. Julia, in utter shock, was called to the police station to give a statement. She was completely devastated, not only by Bram's death, but also by her husband's actions. During the interrogation, Julia was initially shy and hesitant. However, under the insistence of the police and pressure from clear evidence, she was gradually forced to admit her affair with Bram. Julia recounted that it all started when Bram seduced her with promises of career advancement. Caught in the whirlwind of temptation and power, Julia agreed to a deal with Bram, despite the betrayal of Ruben. Julia also detailed secret meetings at hotels and camping trips that Bram had arranged. She admitted that she felt guilty and scared, but did not have the courage to end the relationship, fearing that she would lose everything she had achieved in her career. Finally, Julia said that recently Ruben started to suspect and follow her. She had noticed a change in Ruben's behavior, but did not expect that he would discover the whole truth and lead to such a tragedy. Meanwhile, Ruben, in another interrogation room, frankly admitted all his actions. He recounted that after discovering the relationship between Julia and Bram, he felt deeply betrayed and offended. Ruben could not accept the fact that the wife he loved betrayed him with the director of the hospital. When asked about his motive for the murder, Ruben said that he was overcome with anger and feelings of betrayal. Ruben decided that Bram had to pay for what he had done, and he took a gun to the hospital with the intention of killing Bram to end his suffering. Ruben admits that he was fully aware of the consequences of his actions, but at that moment he no longer cared about anything other than killing. After killing Bram, Ruben had no intention of running away, as he knew that his life was over since he discovered the truth. After taking statements from both Julia and Ruben, the police had a complete picture of what had happened. The investigation ended with the whole truth being revealed: the affair between Julia and Bram, the exploitation and manipulation on Bram's part, and finally the murder that was motivated by Ruben's grief and anger. Ruben's trial attracted much public and media attention, with Reuben charged with first-degree murder. The prosecution argued that Reuben acted with clear intent, bringing a gun into the hospital and shooting Bram after discovering an affair between his wife, Julia, and Bram. At trial, Reuben's defense attorneys attempted to present mitigating circumstances, emphasizing that Reuben had acted out of uncontrolled rage over a betrayal. They also pointed to Reuben's unblemished past and contributions to the military. However, the facts of Reuben's murder could not be denied. Julia also testified, admitting everything about her relationship with Bram and expressing deep remorse. However, Julia's testimony did not change the outcome. The jury found Reuben guilty, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At the end of the trial, Reuben accepted the verdict in silence, knowing that his life had changed forever. The case left deep pain and regret for all involved, becoming a bitter lesson in betrayal and the consequences of the abuse of power. Thank you for watching this tragic case that happened in the town of Zwolle, Netherlands. This case is a painful testament to the terrible consequences that betrayal, greed, and abuse of power can have. Whatever the reason, violence is never the answer, and acts of anger can destroy many lives. Story 5. On a summer afternoon on June 13, 2010, the small town of Hoogveen, Netherlands, suddenly became the center of attention when a horrific murder was exposed. This town, where everyone knew each other and daily life went on peacefully, had never witnessed such a tragedy in the past. In every marital relationship, loyalty and trust are the core foundations. However, when greed and extramarital affairs creep into life, they often lead to unforeseen consequences and sometimes inevitable tragedy. Promises of a rich life, lavish luxury, and irresistible temptations can blind people, leading them down the path of betrayal and crime. Before going into the details of the case, I would like to briefly explain to you that this is a completely real case. However, in order to respect the privacy and avoid affecting the people involved, we have decided not to use the real names of the characters in this case. To ensure that we do not hurt or offend anyone, we have replaced them with other names. The purpose of sharing this case is to bring educational value to everyone. We hope you sympathize, enjoy, and continue to support us. Now let's learn about the crimes in this tragic case. This case revolves around the marriage of Henk and Marieke, which is turned upside down by Marieke's calculating affair with Willem, a rich and charming man. Henk was born on April 15, 1980 in Hoogveen, a small, quiet town in the northeast of the Netherlands. He is the eldest son in a middle-class family that traditionally values work ethic and diligence. Henk's parents always encouraged their children to study hard and pursue their dreams. Henk grew up surrounded by love and care, which shaped his quiet but sincere personality. From a young age, Henk proved to be an intelligent and hardworking boy. He was always at the top of his class throughout his high school years and received a scholarship to university. Henk decided to study business administration at the University of Groningen, one of the most prestigious universities in the Netherlands. Here, he made constant efforts to achieve high academic results. After graduating with honors, Henk returned to his hometown and started working as an office clerk at a small finance company in Hoogveen. Although the job did not pay well, Henk was dedicated and responsible. He believed that perseverance and work ethic would be the keys to furthering his career. Henk is a man of principle, and this is evident in the way he treats those around him. His friends and colleagues love him for his sincerity, gentleness, and willingness to help. However, something important is missing from Henk's life, a partner to share the joys and sorrows of life. By the age of 30, Henk was still single, partly because he always put his work first and partly because he was quite shy in relationships. He always wanted to find a woman who understood and appreciated the values he pursued. That was when he met Marieke, a beautiful girl. Marieke, born in 1982 in a small town in the Netherlands, was the youngest child in a middle-class family. From a young age, she always longed for a luxurious life, far beyond what her humble family could provide. Despite being educated and raised in a stable environment, Marieke always felt dissatisfied with her current life. Marijk and Henk first met in the spring of 2007 at a business management seminar organized by a small finance company in Hoogveen. Henk, then an employee of the company, was tasked with helping to organize the event, while Marijk tended as a guest, hoping to gain contacts and knowledge for her career. Henk, with his gentle and sincere nature, quickly impressed Marijk through his stories about work and life. In turn, Marijk attracted Henk with her intelligence and gentle beauty. After the seminar, they exchanged phone numbers and arranged to meet for coffee to continue their conversation. The meetings gradually became more frequent. Henk, with his calm and sincere personality, made Marijk feel safe and cared for. Although Henk was not a rich or ambitious man, he gave Marijk a sense of stability and trust. They shared their dreams, aspirations, and life's difficulties. Their different personalities seemed to complement each other, and their feelings grew deeper. After about a year of dating, Henk decided to propose to Marijk in the summer of 2008 during a trip to a famous tulip garden in Lies. It was a simple but meaningful moment. Marijk, despite her dreams of a more luxurious life, agreed because she believed that Henk would be a good husband and would provide her with a stable life. They got married in the autumn of the same year, in an intimate ceremony attended by family and close friends in a small church in Hoogveen. Their wedding was praised by everyone as a memorable event, full of love and sincerity. Henk and Marijk started their married life with hope for a bright future. However, as their married life gradually settled into a routine, Marijk began to feel dissatisfied with the peace and simplicity that Henk brought. Dreams of wealth and a lavish life still haunted her, causing her to gradually distance herself from Henk, even though he always tried to bring her happiness. This was the beginning of the events that followed, when Marijk met Willem, a successful and rich man, but not lacking in the charm of a man. One afternoon, while shopping in a large shopping mall in Amsterdam, Marijk met Willem. She was admiring the luxurious clothes in the store, daydreaming about a life of luxury that she could never have. It was then that Willem appeared, elegant and charming, as if he had stepped out of her luxurious dreams. They met eyes as they entered the store, and the attraction between them was instant. Willem, a successful real estate businessman, is the embodiment of everything Marijk has always wanted. Not only is he rich, but he is also confident and has a classy lifestyle. When he realizes Mariek's interest in luxury items, Willem does not hesitate to strike up a conversation with her. They exchange a few pleasantries, and Willem soon invites Marijk to a nearby upscale cafe. The conversation in the cafe went on longer than expected. Willem, with his deep knowledge and sense of humor, made Marijk feel comfortable and attracted. She began to talk about her unhappy marriage, about her unfulfilled dreams. Willem listened, occasionally interjecting words of encouragement, and gradually the conversation turned to the opportunities that a new life could bring. Willem seemed to sympathize with Mariek's aspirations, and the luxury of his life was a confirmation that everything she dreamed of could come true. Not long after that first meeting, Willem began to regularly contact Marijk. They met more and more often, from secret lunches to dates in posh places without Henk's knowledge. Mariek's life since meeting Willem seems to have entered a new phase full of passion, sin, and adventure. Their secret relationship is not only a betrayal of Henk, but also a betrayal of the values that Marijk once believed in. But the attraction, power, and promise of a luxurious life that Willem brings make her forget everything. Marijk begins to rush into this relationship blindly, without thinking about the consequences. After several dates and coffee chats, Willem decided to take their relationship to the next level. That night, Willem met Marijk at a luxury hotel in central Amsterdam. Marijk, although hesitant, decided to go anyway. She was drawn in by Willem's charisma and the promise of a life she had always dreamed of. When Marijk entered the reserved room, she found Willem already waiting with a glass of red wine in his hand. The spacious room with its soft lighting and alluring scent immediately made her feel drawn into the space. Willem approached her, his eyes filled with desire and confidence. Without another word, they began to kiss passionately, and everything happened quickly after that. They had an intense, intimate exchange. This was the first time Marijk had betrayed Henk in a clear way. They had spent passionate hours together, with nothing but attraction between them. After it was over, Willem held Marijk in his arms, whispering sweet nothings about their future together. Marijk felt both excited and scared, but in the end, the feeling of being wanted and the promise of a new life overcame all her worries. After that first time, the relationship between Marijk and Willem became deeper. They began to see each other more often, and their affairs were no longer limited to luxury hotels. Sometimes, in the evenings after work, Willem would pick Marijk up from her workplace, and they would drive to secluded places where they could be together without fear of being discovered. Those evenings, in the cramped space of the luxury car, they had passionate and adventurous moments. Willem knew how to create unexpected situations, from playing romantic music to stopping the car on deserted roads, where the dim streetlights were enough to create a private space for the two of them. Marijk was a bit hesitant at first, but Willem's boldness and confidence made her unable to resist. New feelings mixed with adventure. One day, as they were driving out of Amsterdam after a romantic dinner, Willem suddenly stopped the car in a small forest. It was dark, and no one was around. Willem turned to Marijk, his eyes blazing, and without another word, they fell into each other like there was no tomorrow. Whispers, light touches, all in the narrow but passionate space of the car. That night, Marijk returned home later than usual, filled with a feeling of excitement, but also guilt. The affair became more complicated when Willem began inviting Marijk to his home, a large mansion on the outskirts of Amsterdam, filled with amenities and luxury Marijk had never seen before. Every time she entered the house, Marijk felt like she was entering a completely different world, where her extravagant dreams came true. Willem will prepare a luxurious meal with wine and fine food, creating the perfect romantic atmosphere. After the meal, they will sit together on the soft sofa in the large living room, where soft lighting and melodious jazz music will serve as a background for whispers of love. In this private space, nothing could stop them. Willem did not hesitate to show his passion, and Marijk was quickly caught up in the whirlwind of illicit love. They spent hours together, oblivious to the outside world. Willem even gave Marijk expensive gifts, from sparkling necklaces to luxurious dresses that she could never afford. Marijk felt like she was living in a dream she did not want to wake up from. But it wasn't just romantic dinners. One time, when their emotions were running high, they couldn't wait to go upstairs and immediately jumped into each other right in the living room, on the sofa. The feeling of daring and adventure made their relationship more dramatic and difficult to break up. One of their most daring affairs took place one afternoon, when Marijk and Willem decided to meet at a fancy restaurant in central Amsterdam. They chose a table in a secluded corner, creating a private space between the other customers. The meal was filled with exquisite food and fine wine, but neither could focus on anything but each other. The tension between them grew to an almost unbearable level. The passionate glances, the light touches under the table, all made the atmosphere stuffy and full of desire. Finally, unable to contain himself any longer, Willem whispered to Marijk that they needed some privacy. Marijk knew immediately what that meant, and without hesitation, she stood up and followed Willem into the restaurant's restroom. As soon as they entered, Willem immediately pulled Marijk into one of the most private restrooms. The thrill and boldness made both of them unable to control themselves. In that narrow and stuffy space, they had a passionate and adventurous encounter. The whispers, soft sounds mixed with the music coming from outside, created an atmosphere that was both dramatic and emotional. Marijk knew that this was an extremely dangerous act, but the feeling of being forbidden and adventurous only increased her excitement. When they left the bathroom, both of them tried to appear calm, but their eyes and secret smile said it all. Gradually, Marijk realized that her relationship with Willem was no longer just an affair. She began to depend on Willem both emotionally and materially. Expensive gifts, dates in luxurious places, all made her feel like she was living in a world she had dreamed of. But at the same time, her feelings of guilt and fear of being discovered grew inside her. Willem, with his experience and wisdom, understood this well. He began to suggest to Marijk that if she wanted to have this life forever, they had to do something to deal with Henk. Marijk, although knowing it was wrong, Her greed and passion had led her deeper into this dark plan with no way out. Willem takes Mareike into his world, where money and power seem to have no limits. Mareike is swept up in his lavish lifestyle and feels like she has finally found the man who can give her everything she has always desired. After many sleepless nights, Mareike decided to kill Henk and start a new life with Willem. She began to plan carefully, researching deadly poisons that were difficult to detect. She eventually found a black market vendor who provided her with a colorless, odorless poison that was difficult to detect in conventional medical tests. With the poison in hand, Mareike planned the murder in detail. She chose their wedding anniversary as the day Henk would never suspect anything. She prepared a romantic dinner, choosing Henk's favorite soup to poison. That day, Mareike had prepared everything perfectly. When Henk returned home, she greeted him with a smile and loving words. They sat down at the dinner table, and Mareike secretly slipped poison into the soup that Henk usually ate first. After a few minutes, Henk began to feel sick and collapsed at the table. Mareike, as expected, called an ambulance and pretended to panic, but it was too late. Henk died, and his death was ruled to be a sudden heart attack. Henk's sudden death left many around him in shock. Although Mareike tried to create a picture of a sudden heart attack, Henk's family did not easily accept that explanation. Henk was a healthy man with no history of heart disease, so his sudden death under such circumstances made them suspect that something was wrong. Henk's parents and siblings, who had always cared for him, found his death unusual. They recalled the small details they had heard Henk tell them about his unhappy marriage to Mareike, and that made them even more suspicious. The sense of loss, coupled with the suspicions about Henk's death, prompted the family to take action. They contacted the police and requested a more thorough investigation into Henk's death, including an autopsy to determine the exact cause. Initially, the police found no obvious signs of foul play, but after the family's insistence and reasonable suspicions, they agreed to conduct an autopsy. A careful autopsy was performed by a team of forensic experts. The results were shocking in Henk's body. They discovered a colorless, odorless poison that is difficult to detect in conventional tests. This discovery immediately changed the nature of the case from a natural death to a deliberate murder. The police began a full investigation. They reviewed all the details surrounding Henk's death. The findings from the autopsy became crucial evidence that Henk had been poisoned, and the truth about Mareike's plot slowly began to emerge. After discovering poison in Henk's system, the police quickly summoned Mareike to the station to give her statement. Although she tried to remain calm, anxiety was evident on Mareike's face as she faced the investigators. They started with simple questions about her married life, about Henk's last evening. Under the pressure of the interrogation and the evidence the police had gathered, Mareike began to tremble. She realized that she could no longer hide the truth. Finally, under pressure and the ingenuity of the investigators, Mareike confessed the whole thing. She admitted that she had poisoned Henk and recounted the details of her relationship with Willem, as well as how he had suggested that she get rid of Henk so that they could live together. When Mareike was summoned, Willem immediately knew things had gone wrong. Realizing that his association with Mareike could land him in legal trouble, Willem quickly cut off all contact with her. He stopped returning Mareike's calls, erased all traces of their relationship, and did everything he could to protect himself from possible involvement. However, in Mareike's testimony, she made it clear that Willem had suggested killing Henk. The police could not ignore this detail and began to expand the investigation to Willem. However, Willem was not easily defeated. With his wealth and extensive connections, he hired a team of top lawyers to defend him. During the investigation, Willem admitted to having an affair with Mareike, but he firmly denied any involvement in suggesting the murder. Willem's lawyers focused on proving that, although he had a romantic relationship with Mareike, there was no concrete evidence that he had incited her to kill Henk. With his connections and money, Willem successfully cleared himself of the charges. The evidence that he incited Mareike to murder was not convincing enough in court. In the end, Willem was only found guilty of adultery and other immoral acts, but he escaped serious punishment for Henk's death. Meanwhile, Mareike had no one to stand by her. She faced a harsh sentence and loneliness when Willem abandoned her. On September 15, 2010, Mareike was formally brought to trial at Hoogveen Court on charges of murdering her husband. During the trial, Mareike admitted to her crime, detailing her plan to poison Henk and Willem's involvement in suggesting that she commit the crime. However, when questioned, Willem denied all charges of inciting the murder, only admitting to having an extramarital affair with Mareike. On October 30, 2010, after reviewing the evidence and testimony, the court sentenced Mareike to life in prison for premeditated murder. Willem, thanks to a strong defense from his legal team and the lack of concrete evidence of incitement, was only fined and discredited in society, but not sentenced to prison. The trial ended, leaving Mareike in prison and alone. Mareike's case is a tragic story of greed, betrayal, and the devastating consequences they bring. Despite achieving her goal of eliminating the husband she considered an obstacle, Mareike eventually paid the price with her entire life in a cold prison. As for Willem Veldhuis, although he escaped the law, his reputation and social status were severely damaged. The case is a clear reminder that crime never brings happiness, and the truth will eventually be revealed, no matter how hard the criminal tries to hide it. Story 6. Now we will look at a tragedy that caused a sensation in New Delhi in 2012, the Priya Sharma case, which shook the public and shocked many people about the dark secrets that could be hidden behind a seemingly perfect marriage. Priya Sharma, a young wife of only 26 years old, suffered a tragic end when she discovered the secret homosexual relationship of her husband, Amit Kumar, a software engineer. Their marriage, once seen as a beautiful love story, ended in a brutal murder when Amit himself murdered Priya to cover up this horrifying truth. Priya Sharma was born in 1986 in a small village on the outskirts of New Delhi, India. Her family was not rich, one could even say poor, but it was a warm family where love and sacrifice were values. As the first daughter in a family of 3 children, Priya understood from a young age the difficulties her parents had to face to raise their children. Her parents were simple, hard-working people who worked tirelessly to make a living, but life was still full of hardships and deprivation. From a young age, Priya was a gentle and obedient girl, always thoughtful and caring for others. She was not only a filial daughter but also an exemplary elder sister, always knowing how to take care of and protect her younger siblings. Understanding her family's situation, Priya soon realized that she needed to help her parents, which led to her decision to drop out of school early to help support her family. Giving up her studies to work was not an easy decision for Priya, but she accepted it with optimism and resilience. She started working at a small grocery store in her village, a job that did not require much skill but required hard work and dedication. Every day Priya wakes up very early, prepares goods, cleans the store, and starts a long working day from early morning to late at night. Although the sales job does not bring in much income, Priya always feels proud that she can contribute a small part to help her family. She constantly learns and practices the necessary skills in business, from how to manage goods, communicate with customers, to money management. All of these help Priya become a small grocery seller but very popular with customers. People around her love Priya for her gentle, honest personality and always willing to help others. She never refuses when someone needs help, even if it is a small thing like lending a few items or helping an elderly person in the village. Priya's sincerity and kindness have helped her build close relationships with everyone around her, and she is always respected for that. Although Priya's life has been rough and full of hardships, she always holds on to her faith in a better future. For Priya, happiness is not wealth or status, but love and peace in the family. The belief and aspiration for a happy family has become the driving force that helps Priya overcome all challenges in life. Despite having to work hard every day, she always keeps a smile on her face and never gives up on her dream. On the contrary, Amit Kumar was born in 1984 in a middle-class family in New Delhi, India. Since childhood, Amit has been surrounded by love and support from his family, which has created a solid foundation for his development. Amit's parents have always attached great importance to education and have invested a lot in his studies. They believe that knowledge and education are the keys to opening the door to success in life. Therefore, from the early years of his life, Amit has been oriented to become a person with a stable and successful career. Amit is a bright boy, a quick learner and has always excelled in his studies. He is particularly fond of science and mathematics, subjects that have attracted his attention since his school days. Thanks to the encouragement from his family and his own hard work, Amit always achieved high academic results, which helped him receive many compliments from teachers and friends. After completing high school with excellent results, Amit decided to pursue information technology, a field that was growing strongly in India at that time. With determination and desire to succeed, Amit passed the entrance exam to one of the prestigious universities in New Delhi and studied software engineering. During his university years, Amit constantly strived and continuously achieved impressive results. He was not only an excellent student in academics, but also a person with foresight and the ability to solve problems creatively. After graduating from university, Amit quickly found a job at a leading technology company in New Delhi. With his talent and constant efforts, he gradually asserted himself in a fiercely competitive working environment. Amit quickly emerged as one of the top software engineers in the company. He was assigned important projects and always delivered high-quality work. Amit's dedication and tireless work ethic earned him the respect of his peers and the trust of his superiors. Besides his successful career, Amit is also known as a man with a friendly and gentle personality. He easily builds good relationships with everyone around him, from colleagues to friends. Amit's intelligence, talent, and communication skills have helped him build a large social network, which further strengthens his position in the company and in the community. In 2008, when Priya Sharma was busy with her grocery business in Old Delhi, she did not expect that her life was about to turn a new page. One autumn morning, Priya went to the market to buy goods as usual. There, she happened to meet Amit Kumar, a young and successful software engineer. Amit was walking around the old market looking for some handicrafts that he loved. Their meeting happened naturally, when Amit, attracted by Priya's simple and genuine beauty, struck up a conversation with her while waiting at a stall. The initial conversation was light, but left a strong impression on both of them. Amit, who was used to modern, educated women, suddenly realized the attraction of Priya's sincerity and simplicity. Meanwhile, Priya, though not used to dealing with successful men, felt comfortable and secure talking to Amit. They quickly exchanged phone numbers and kept in touch. In the following days, Amit kept thinking about Priya and decided to ask her out. Priya was initially hesitant because she was not used to fancy dates, but Amit's patience and sincerity convinced her. They started meeting each other on weekend evenings, strolling around the bustling streets of Old Delhi, enjoying delicious street food and sharing stories about life. Gradually, their relationship became more intimate. Amit, who was used to modern life and luxurious amenities, started taking Priya to fancy restaurants and high-end entertainment venues in New Delhi. Although Priya felt a little uncomfortable in these unfamiliar spaces, her love and respect for Amit helped her gradually adapt. Amit always paid attention to Priya's feelings. Not only did he want her to experience new things, but also wanted to prove that she deserved to enjoy all the good things in life. Every date, every outing was an opportunity for the two to understand each other better. Amit found in Priya's sincerity, hard work, and kindness qualities that he truly appreciated. In turn, Priya felt in Amit the caring, thoughtful, and delicate qualities that she had always wanted in a life partner. Although they came from different backgrounds, with Priya being a simple woman and Amit being a successful engineer, love blurred those differences. After 2 years of dating, Amit realized that Priya was the one he wanted to share his life with. One romantic evening at a fancy restaurant, where they had shared many beautiful memories, Amit decided to propose to Priya. It was an emotional moment when Amit presented Priya with the ring that he had chosen for a long time. Priya, though surprised, felt her heart burst with happiness. She had been waiting for this moment for a long time, and now that it had come, Priya agreed without hesitation. Their wedding was held in early 2010, a simple yet warm and loving affair. Priya, in a traditional sari, looked radiant as a flower, while Amit could not hide his happiness standing next to the woman he loved the most. Family and friends of both came to celebrate, blessing the young couple with a happy and loving life. After getting married in early 2010, Amit and Priya's life seemed to be in full swing. They lived in a small but cozy apartment in New Delhi, filled with laughter and happiness for the young couple. Amit continued to work at the technology company where he built his career, while Priya took care of their small family. From friends, colleagues to both families, everyone admired their love and commitment. Priya often received compliments for being a devoted and thoughtful wife, while Amit was highly appreciated for being a caring and respectful husband. Their life was filled with joy as Amit and Priya often participated in social activities together, met friends, and organized small parties at home. Every day for Priya was a happy day as she felt loved and protected by the husband she admired. Amit, in Priya's eyes, was the epitome of a successful and caring husband. Their life seemed like a dream come true. However, just over a year after their marriage, Amit began to take business trips away from home, especially to Mumbai, a vibrant city full of opportunities in the technology industry. Initially, these trips did not worry Priya too much, because she understood that Amit's job required him to travel and attend important meetings. Amit always knew how to reassure his wife with reasonable explanations and small gifts whenever he returned from a business trip. However, over time Amit's trips became more frequent and longer. He started to be away from home more often, sometimes for weeks, and sometimes changed his plans at the last minute without informing Priya. This made Priya feel anxious and insecure. Every time Amit was away from home, Priya felt empty and full of unanswered questions. What worried Priya the most was the change in the way Amit communicated about his trips. Initially, Amit used to share details about his work and what he would do when he was in Mumbai. But gradually he started to become more reserved, only talking in general terms about meetings and busy work. When Priya asked for specifics or why he had to stay longer than planned, Amit would often give vague or even evasive answers, which only made Priya more suspicious. Priya couldn't ignore the unsettling feelings inside her. She began to feel that something was wrong, but she didn't want to think that Amit might be hiding something. Every time he returned, Priya tried to stay calm and gently asked about the trip, but Amit only answered vaguely and quickly changed the subject. This made Priya feel more and more isolated in her own marriage. On the nights when Amit was away, Priya would lie awake, thinking about the changes in their lives. She remembered the happy days after their marriage, when Amit was always by her side, sharing all the joys and sorrows. Now Priya felt like there was an invisible distance growing between them. The evenings in the house became lonelier and Priya began to wonder if she had done something wrong, or if there was something going on that she did not know about. Despite her doubts and insecurities, Priya tried to maintain peace in the family. She did not want to face the truth that could hurt, nor did she want to disrupt the life they had built together. Priya told herself that maybe Amit was just busy with work and things would soon return to normal. But deep down, Priya couldn't deny that their marriage was showing signs of cracks. And she knew that if Amit's mysterious trips continued, her doubts and worries would only increase, leading them to a turn Priya had never expected. But during his business trips to Mumbai, Amit Kumar entered into a surprising homosexual relationship with Rohan Gupta, a wealthy and powerful man. Rohan, 29, is a successful businessman, owns many properties and has a great influence in the business world of Mumbai. They first met at an event for technology investors, where Amit attended as a representative of his company. From the first meeting, Rohan was attracted to Amit's intelligence and elegant demeanor. Rohan's charm and strength also created an irresistible attraction for Amit. Initially, Amit feels that this relationship is just a new experience, a glimpse into his daily life. However, as they continue to meet and spend time together, the relationship gradually deepens. Amit is fascinated by the world that Rohan opens up before him, a life full of luxury, mystery, but also passion and temptation. Rohan's presence in Amit's life gives him a new feeling that he has never experienced before, a satisfaction and release from the pressures of everyday life. However, the complexity of this relationship goes beyond passion and emotions. Amit begins to lead a double life, on one side as a loving and devoted husband to Priya, on the other as Rohan's secret lover. The stress and anxiety of being discovered makes Amit always on guard and keeps his trips to Mumbai a complete secret. But gradually, The change in Amit's attitude and behavior began to arouse suspicion in Priya. Priya, being a sensitive and delicate woman, could not help but notice the unusual signs from her husband. She began to notice that Amit was becoming more and more distant and secretive, and his business trips became more mysterious. He stopped sharing his work with her as he used to, and his answers about his trips were often vague and unspecific. This made Priya feel uneasy and worried. Priya's suspicions grew as Amit started going on trips without notice and his absences became longer. She couldn't stop thinking that her husband might be hiding something important. Finally, after many sleepless nights, Priya decided that she couldn't continue living in confusion and suspicion. She was determined to find out the truth, even though she knew that the truth might be painful. In April 2012, after many sleepless nights thinking about what was going on in her marriage, Priya Sharma decided that she couldn't wait any longer. She had to know the truth about Amit's mysterious business trips. Despite her worries, Priya was determined to follow her husband on his upcoming trip to Mumbai. With great care, she arranged everything quietly without leaving any trace to arouse Amit's suspicion. Priya knew that this might be her only chance to discover the truth. When she reached Mumbai, Priya rented a small room in a budget hotel near the luxury hotel where Amit was staying. From this position, she could observe Amit's every move without being detected. Priya spent most of her time in the hotel room, silently watching her husband and recording what she saw. Priya's patience finally paid off when she witnessed a scene that shattered her heart. Late one afternoon, from a hidden corner of the hotel hallway, Priya saw Amit enter the hotel room with a strange man. Her heart pounded. Her feelings of anxiety and suspicion grew. She decided to move closer, quietly following them without making a sound. When she reached the door, Priya witnessed a scene she had never imagined. Amit and the man, Rohan Gupta, were kissing passionately in the luxurious room. Priya was petrified at the sight before her. She felt as if everything around her was collapsing. Everything she had believed in and loved seemed to be swept away in an instant. Her heart was broken, not only by Amit's betrayal, but also by the painful truth that her husband had so cruelly deceived her. She left quietly, returning to her hotel room, tears streaming down her face, not knowing how to face this truth. That night Priya could not sleep. She kept thinking about what she had witnessed, wondering how Amit could do this to her. Their happy memories are now meaningless, replaced by pain and betrayal. Priya knows that she cannot continue living in this lie. She decides that she must confront Amit and force him to tell her the truth. Priya hopes that maybe, in this confrontation, she will find a reason, some explanation that can help her understand Amit's actions. The next morning Priya calls Amit, saying that she has arrived in Mumbai and wants to meet him immediately. Amit, completely unaware that Priya has been following him, feels nervous but agrees to meet her at a cafe near the hotel. Priya shows up with dark circles under her eyes and a tear-stained face. Amit quickly realizes that she knows something. When they sit down, Priya can no longer contain her emotions. She looks straight into Amit's eyes and asks, "Why did you lie to me? Why did you do this?" Amit initially tried to deny it, but Priya's persistence and clear evidence made it impossible for him to continue lying. Amit eventually confessed about his relationship with Rohan, but he tried to justify it as a mistake, a confusing phase in his life. However, Priya could not accept those excuses. She feels betrayed, deceived by the man she loved and trusted. Their conversation becomes more tense when Priya asks Amit to end his relationship with Rohan and return to their previous life. But Amit, confused and panicked, realizes that if the truth is revealed it will ruin his career and reputation. He begins to beg Priya to keep the secret, promising that he will change and everything will be back to normal. But Priya, in extreme pain and disappointment, cannot accept continuing to live in a fake marriage. Realizing that Priya has no intention of keeping quiet, Amit begins to feel truly panicked. He envisions the dire consequences if the truth about his homosexual relationship is revealed. His career will be ruined, his reputation will be ruined, and the life he has built will be completely destroyed. In a panic, dark thoughts began to take over his mind. Amit looked at Priya, the woman he once loved, now sitting before him with tears in her eyes and an unwavering determination. He felt cornered, with no way out. The fear of losing everything blinded Amit, and in a moment of loss he attacked Priya. The attack was over in a split second, but the consequences were devastating. Amit, in a fit of panic and anger, strangled Priya until she stopped breathing. When he realized what he had done, Amit froze, overwhelmed with horror and guilt. Priya, the wife he had promised to protect and love, now lay lifeless on the floor. In the deadly silence of the room, Amit realized that his life had been changed forever. His initial panic quickly turned to coldness as he began to think about how to cover up his crime. He knew that no one could find out the truth about Priya's death, as that would not only expose his homosexuality but also cost him everything. Amit began to plan how to hide Priya's death, finding ways to hide all evidence and erase any traces that could lead to him. All the while, he kept justifying himself by saying that he had no other choice. But deep down, Amit knew that he had lost everything, not just Priya, but himself. Priya Sharma's death quickly attracted the attention of the New Delhi police. When her body was found in her hotel room, all the initial signs pointed to it being neither an accident nor a suicide. Police immediately sealed off the scene and launched an investigation to find out what led to the young woman's death. The investigation began with a collection of evidence from the scene. The hotel room where Priya was murdered was thoroughly examined, from bloodstains, fingerprints to every item in the room. From the signs on the victim's body, investigators quickly determined that this was a targeted murder. However, a big question was raised from the beginning: who was the perpetrator and what was his motive? Amit Kumar, the victim's husband, was the first person the police contacted. However, what immediately aroused the investigators' suspicions was Amit's absence during the time his wife was murdered. When questioned, Amit said that he was in Mumbai on a business trip and had no idea that his wife had come to the city. However, the details Amit provided were unclear and contradictory, raising doubts in the minds of the investigators. During the investigation, the police began to learn more about the relationship between Amit and Priya, especially the mysterious business trips that Amit has been taking frequently lately. Neighbors and friends of the couple described Amit and Priya as a happy couple, but recently they noticed that Amit had become increasingly distant and absent from home. The frequent business trips to Mumbai had not only intrigued Priya but also those around him. The police continued to dig into Amit's travels and discovered that, although he claimed to be on business, there was no evidence that he was engaged in official business activities. This made the police even more suspicious about the real reason for Amit's trips. They also realized that Priya may have followed Amit to Mumbai, which fit with her murder there. A major turning point in the investigation came when the police examined Amit's financial transactions and communications. They discovered that Amit had paid for many lavish services at high-end hotels in Mumbai, and that he was in regular contact with a man named Rohan Gupta. When police looked up information about Rohan, they found that he was a wealthy businessman and had been in close contact with Amit in recent times. The police began looking into the relationship between Amit and Rohan, and it didn't take long for them to discover the shocking truth: Amit was in a homosexual relationship with Rohan. This explained why Amit frequently traveled to Mumbai without providing details of his travels to Priya. The relationship was also the reason why Amit became distant and mysterious to his wife. When faced with irrefutable evidence, Amit initially tried to deny the crime and argued that he had nothing to do with Priya's death. However, the police collected enough evidence from the scene, from hotel security cameras to calls and messages between Amit and Rohan, to confirm that Amit was directly involved in the murder. Finally, with no way out, Amit had to admit everything. He recounted that when Priya found out about his relationship with Rohan, she asked him to end it immediately. But Amit, fearing that if Priya revealed this, his career and reputation would be ruined, lost control and attacked his wife in a fit of panic. Amit confessed that he had strangled Priya until she stopped breathing and then tried to stage the crime to cover up the crime. Amit's confession shocked everyone who knew him. The police quickly arrested Amit and took the necessary legal action. Rohan Gupta was also called in for questioning, but there was no evidence that he was involved in the murder, so he was only investigated for his role in concealing his relationship with Amit. The investigation ended with Amit being charged with murder, and the case quickly became a hot topic in the media. The event not only shocked the community, but also highlighted the tragedies that can occur when people live in a lie and fear of being discovered. Amit, a man who was once respected and loved, now faces the terrible consequences of his actions. The homosexual relationship he tried to hide not only destroyed his marriage, but also led to the tragic death of Priya, his wife, who once trusted and loved him. While Amit faced the wrath of the law, Priya's family and friends suffered an irreparable loss. Priya's life was cruelly taken away, and her loved ones were left to live with the trauma of betrayal and crime. Amit Kumar's trial began on November 13, 2012, attracting intense public and media attention. The details of Amit's secret homosexual relationship with Rohan Gupta, along with the motive for the murder to cover up the truth, shocked and outraged the public. In court, prosecutors presented compelling evidence, from text messages and phone calls between Amit and Rohan, to Amit's own confession of the murder in a fit of panic. The jury took little time to reach a verdict. Amit Kumar was charged with first-degree murder, with overwhelming evidence and clear motive. His actions were not only a betrayal of his wife, who trusted and loved him, but also a serious and unforgivable crime. Amit's weak defense could not change the fact that he deliberately murdered Priya to protect his personal secret, without thinking of the terrible consequences for his family and society. When the verdict was announced, Amit was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict was unanimously passed by most of those present at the trial, many of whom were friends and relatives of Priya, who had suffered great loss. The truth about the double life of Amit, a man once considered a role model in society, shocked many. Whispers of this tragic story spread throughout the community, becoming a clear warning about the unpredictable consequences of hiding the truth. The trial ended, but its echoes lingered, leaving a deep mark on the minds of those who followed it. The case of Amit Kumar is not only a story of a terrible crime, but also a testament to the fact that the truth always comes out eventually, and wrongdoings are severely punished. As the rain falls and the night deepens, thank you for being here with me at Radio Night Crime. True crime stories remind us of life's mysteries and the need to stay aware, even in the stillness of the night. If you enjoyed tonight's story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Let the sound of the rain lull you to sleep, and until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and let the night keep you company.